everyone, and welcome back to Dear Editor. I'm your host, Lady George.
Precious, you're welcome to Dear Editor.
Today we have Torubein. I don't even know how to define her because she's strength personified. She's beautiful in and outside. I mean, and she's a warrior. And I would really love for her to introduce herself.
Hi guys, my name is Torubein Donyegha. I am the founder of the Beyond Sickle Cell Foundation. I am a 9-to-5er. I'm also a business owner, but most importantly, I have been a warrior for the first 26 years of my life until I had a life-changing transplant, bone marrow transplant in 2019.
Okay, so I know that people that live with sickle cell anemia, they're tagged that, like all their life they're, oh, that person is a sickle cell, that person is. So I would like you to tell us who you are outside of that.
Okay. So for the first 26 years of my life, sickle cell defined me. And not until after my transplant, that's when I got to learn, different aspects of my life. That's when I had the liberty to actually know who I am, and that has been barely 6 years and I'm still learning who I am. But in the simplest terms, I am a fun, loving, vibrant soul. That's what I've gotten to learn. I didn't get the opportunity to know that about myself because sickle cell kind of like prevented me from doing all I wanted to do. It prevented me from being all I wanted to be. Growing up, I wanted to be a doctor, but I found out that I couldn't run that race. In fact, when I first left secondary school, I went straight into medical school. But after my first year, I had to drop out because my health couldn't handle it. Later, I tried to be a nurse. I still had to, after 2 years of, going to classes, I still had to drop out. So everything I really did want at heart, sickle cell stopped me from doing all that. So now I'm getting to rediscover myself. I'm getting to learn more things about myself. And now I'm just focused and purpose driven on on advocating for persons living with sickle cell anemia.
Okay, so growing up with sickle cell, I know you mentioned you went to boarding school and all that. How was it for you and even for your parents? Because I can't imagine having a child that has sickle cell and sending them all the way away to boarding school where they are not sure if they will get a call with any bad news, or even you leaving home, you might feel like, okay, this might be the last time I'll see my family.
So I come from a Christian background. My family, we attend the Redeemed Christian Church of God, and the Redeemed Christian Church of God headquarters is in Lagos Ibadan Expressway, which is called the Redemption Camp. They have a secondary school there called the Redeemers High School. That was the school my parents sent me to, and them sending me there was more like, we're sending you to the house of God, where you're going to be under the umbrella of Daddy Gio, under the umbrella of people that would. So they felt safe, sending me there. But me personally, having to attend boarding school, I went with my younger brother, but we're not in the same class. But living with sickle cell in boarding school, it was tough. I can remember the first time I got punished by a senior. She had told me to do this pig pin thing, and I was doing it, and I was sweating, my legs were shaking. I can remember my peers coming to tell the senior that Torubein is not strong, Torubein is not feeling fine, Torubein has sickle cell. The lady was, I still remember her name, I will not call her name. The lady was so strong at her, she refused to release me until after, a long period of time. And when she finally released me, I fell on the floor. They had to rush me to the sick bay. I had a crisis after the experience. But that experience went wild. That's when everybody in the school got to know that I had sickle cell anemia. So after the experience, some seniors kind of like shielded me. But it didn't completely, erase that experience with living with sickle cell because, number one, I'm far away from home. Number two, the environment was not exactly conducive. So I would get my crisis frequently. But I had people there that would constantly look after me. Even the nurses at the sick bay got used to me. They became like one of my best friends because I would always fall sick and go to them. So it was kind of like an okay experience.
Okay, so when was it that you realized that you were different from other kids, in terms of your health?
So growing up, my parents never told me that I had sickle cell. It never came out plain. I didn't know I had sickle cell until one day during primary school. We had inter-house sports. I had decided that I was going to do the relay race.
Wow.
I was in Yellow House, I can remember, and I wanted to do it. And my friends kept saying, you don't have to. I'm like, no, I must do it. Nobody's going to run faster than me. I was so energized. And I can remember when I got the baton, I was running, and for some reason I blanked out. Apparently I fainted. And I can remember waking up, and the MC was on the mic saying, she gets sickle cell, she gets SS, may they bring water. And that was when I knew that.
You were confused, like, what are they talking about?
What is SS? That was the first.
Else
I promise you, that was the first time I even got to hear the word. Probably 6, 7.
Okay.
That was the first time I got to hear the word sickle cell, and in fact, it was the SS that kept ringing until I found out that it was sickle cell, and I got to learn about it. I got to, find out what sickle cell was. And mind you, I'm not the only one that was living with sickle cell in my family. My younger sister had sickle cell then. My younger sister has sickle cell because she still has it. My elder brother had sickle cell, but he died in 2011. But yeah, that was the first time I got to know what sickle cell was.
Okay, so how did you feel finding out at that age and facing your parents? Did you ever feel like anger or any pain? Like, okay, at least you should have even told me. But I know parents, maybe you're too young, but like, how did that happen?
At my early years, though, I was completely clueless. I mean, I'd found out that I had sickle cell, but I didn't really think it was a big deal. I just felt like, okay, maybe I'll be falling sick more than, other kids. But it didn't really hit me per se because I was a child. You get, when I'm sick, I'll cry. My mom would come. I'll get better. I'll go back. But later in life, to be honest, I didn't really have any resentment and anger because I would rather be alive. Give or take. I love life.
I love life.
I love life. So even living with sickle cell for me is better than not being, never been born. I've never been born. Mm-hmm. So, and even with this life that I'm living, I feel like it's pointing me towards a path. Do you get? Now having to be at the other end of sickle cell, having to go through these experiences. This was what I was born for. Do you get? Right. So I never really blamed my parents or had any sort of resentment or anger, and that doesn't negate the fact that there are other sickle cell warriors that might have that same feeling, and I get it, but that was never really my experience. Yeah.
So what would you say to people that feel that resentment was their parents or anger?
For most of the time, or most of the situations that I've seen, our parents did not know better. Do you get? It's not like in this generation where there's more awareness, So we have to forgive them. If it's now that that you have all these information around, people saying know your genotype, and you still go in and do this, then yes, that anger can be there. But let's forgive our parents. We're in a generation where this information was not out there. My parents specifically, they had given me the story. They had no idea. My dad had a test. My mom knew she was AS, but my dad had a test and they gave him AA. But he didn't bother to check again. So even after he had the first child that had sickle cell anemia, he wasn't still educated enough to know the implication, and they kept giving birth. So they didn't know better. So we have to forgive them.
You mentioned that your parents, you're from a very Christian background. As you got older, did it affect your relationship with God? At the times you would pray and you would be like, God, why am I going through this?
My early university friends would tell me that my favorite word when I would be going through my crisis was, God, why me? They said every time, even though most of the time when I'm in that much severe pain, I don't remember what I say, but they'll tell me that when I'm crying, I'm always asking, why me? And that was it for me for a long time. I would always, because this pain, I don't know if you've seen someone going through a sickle cell crisis. Some doctors would describe it as 10 times worse than labor pain. Do you get? It's no small. Both psychologically, both physically, it's not anything you would wish on even your enemies. So going through that kind of pain, you would question God. Like, why did you bring me into this world to come and go through this kind of suffering? But me, I've been privileged enough to be at the other end of it, and now I can say this is my why. But not every sickle cell patient can answer that question for themselves, because they're still going through it. I only have the opportunity and privilege to be able to answer that question because I've been at the other end of it. But not, and let's be very, realistic, not every sickle cell patient will have this opportunity that I have. But that's why I find myself very blessed to be in this position.
At what point did you know what a bone marrow transplant is, and how did that come about? I would like you to explain it to us, because I'm sure a lot of people, even people living with sickle cell, a lot of them don't even know that there's that option. I know it's a very expensive process, right? So I'd like you to talk us through it. Did you immediately agree to it? Well, how was it for you? Because I'm sure it must have been a lot of mental and emotional and even financial burden, So I'd just like you to talk us through it.
Okay. That's a good question. So I had the opportunity to travel to the United States to do my undergraduate program. First things, I first landed in Boston, and Boston is a very cold city. So I had done my summer program there, but spending 3 months there, I knew I could not cook there because it was so cold that I was always falling sick. Although medically speaking, that city was even better for me because it had a sickle cell clinic.
Right.
That I would always run to if I was having my crisis, and they would take care of me very well. But they had even advised that, coming from Africa and going straight to Boston, for a sickle cell patient, it wasn't advisable. So I had to change school to a school in Texas. So I had gone to Texas, started my nursing degree for that matter.
Oh, nice.
And it was hell. You would think that, coming to a country like the United States where their healthcare system is, some sort of great, you would think that, I would be in a better position medically, but no, I was 3 times worse than what I was going through in Nigeria. So I had fallen sick so bad that I started missing classes, missing semesters, failing my classes. I was not coping well in school. In addition to that, my health was degrading slowly. I started having extra complications. I developed pulmonary embolism like 3 times. I had avascular necrosis. My ulcer got really bad. It was like every AK market day, something was adding anytime I went to the hospital. And my doctor looked at me one day and said, Torubein, we won't give you past 5 years if we continue like this.
How was it receiving that news?
Me?
Yes.
I mean, at that
And
point...
I'm sure you were alone.
Yes, I was alone. To be honest, at that point, I had even started to give up on myself because I'd lived my life, especially when I got to the US, when my health got so bad, I'd lived my life, counting my days. I would always tell myself that I want to do everything I need to do now because I might die very soon. And funny enough, I had a friend that went to the US together. She had sickle cell anemia and she died. So her name is Philomena. When she died, it took a toll on me, and I felt like my time was coming. So even hearing that news, it didn't seem like it didn't surprise me because I had told that to myself. Before my birthday the next year, I would live my life thinking that I wouldn't meet the next year. Before I turned 30, I had told myself that I was not going to ever get to 30 years. So all my birthdays, I would want to have an extra vaganza, or if that's the word. I want to make it so big because I didn't think that I would get to the next year. And so hearing that news, it didn't hit me, which is crazy now talking about it. It didn't hit me anyway because I didn't think I was going to ever live that long.
Anyway.
Yeah.
In societies that work, they have like a database, donors, and then their top priority people and all that. So how were you able to fit into that?
So my doctor had told me that for a typical Nigerian, the first route to go was to test my siblings, because if you look through their database, you won't easily find a match for a black person, not to talk of an African in the first place. So they had to. I can remember I was going home for a holiday. They had given me some test kits to go and swab my siblings on their cheek. I'd done that, sent the test kits back to the US. They did their test, and it came out that one of my sister and one of my brother was a match. But my sister was more of a match than my brother. They have some markers that they look for. And my parents everybody was excited. I was excited. My sister, they spoke to her
How
about
old was
it.
your sister then?
She was 15 when the result was done, and she agreed to be my donor.
Okay,
Till now, she still calls me her savior. She was like, I'm your savior. I saved your life. So, yeah, that's cute.
So how long was this process from finding out that okay, your sister is a match and she's willing to be your savior, like she says?
Yeah. So the whole testing was done in 2018.
Okay.
I did the transplant in 2019. Then the full recovery process didn't end till 2021.
Oh wow.
Okay, so can you talk us through that? Like, you being rolled into the room, and what is a bone marrow transplant?
Yeah. Don't crucify me. I am not a doctor, but to my little knowledge, your bone marrow cells are the cells that produce the red blood cells in your body, the white blood cells in your body, and your platelets. So that's when you're eating chicken, those things inside the bone, those are the bone marrow cells. So these are the cells that determine your blood, basically, and your blood is what determines your your genotype. So having a bone marrow transplant is changing those cells that determine your blood cells. Do you get? So my sister, for example, she's AS. So when they changed her bone marrow cells from mine, my bone marrow cells started producing AS cells. So basically they go down to the roots and change what produces your blood cells. So it's not magic, it is pure science.
This surgery now, like, talk us through it. What part of the body, like, when you say they go down to the roots, where is that root? What is that root?
Okay, so let me talk you through the process. So after they found out she was a match, she had the surgery first. So they took her into the theater and they drilled
This is in the US?
Yes, in the US.
Is it done in Nigeria?
I know they had attempted it. They have attempted it in UBTH, that's the University of Benin Teaching Hospital, some years back. I know of a hospital in Lagos that is saying that they are partnering with some foreign hospitals to do it now. I'm not 100% certain about that, but the one in UBTH, I was aware of it because my parents wanted to get involved at some point. But I wouldn't advise you do it in Nigeria just because we don't have that full experience yet. Yeah. But yes, my sister, they are taking her to a theater, drilled into her bones and collected the bone marrow cells and stored it and prepared it in preparation to put it into my body. So she's the one that had the whole theater, procedure and experience. But she recovered in less than 2 weeks. She went into for the surgery, came out. She was in pain for about 2 days. After I think she got discharged 4 days later, and they told her to take it easy for the next 2 weeks. So it wasn't a horrible experience for her. Although she would tell you that period she was in pain, it was a lot, but it wasn't. It wasn't a major surgery. It was a minor surgery that required a little bit of pain. Me, on the other hand, so while they had prepared the cells for my body, they had to prepare me. So what they did at first, I had to go through chemotherapy. And what chemotherapy does is that it kills your bone marrow cells. So any fast-growing cells in your body, chemotherapy kills it. That's why they use chemotherapy for cancer, because cancer cells are fast growing. And that's why when you're doing chemotherapy, your hair falls off, your nails, because those cells grow very fast. So it killed my bone marrow cells and it kills your immunity. So they are killing my immunity because they don't want a situation whereby my sister's cells will come and my body will start fighting it. So they had to kill my bone marrow cells in preparation to receive new ones, then kill my immunity. I had to do 3 rounds of chemotherapy, and that took a while because I did the first round. They discharged me to go home to rest for about a month plus. I came back to the hospital, did the second round, went home to rest. Then during the 3rd round, I got admitted into the hospital. The 3rd round was like the most aggressive round. That's when I started getting the symptoms of, the full chemotherapy experience. My hair started falling off. I was bald. My tongue had turned black. My nails were, my skin started peeling. It was the whole thing. I had diarrhea, constant diarrhea. I was weak. I could not stand up from the bed. It was a whole process. Then they did an exchange blood transfusion for me. They didn't want a situation whereby we're preparing for this transplant and I will still fall into a sickle cell crisis. We cannot handle both things at the same time. So they needed to change all my blood cells, to fresh AA blood so that I wouldn't have the sickling during the process. So they had changed it. I did chemotherapy, did a full body radiation. What radiation does too is the same thing chemotherapy does, kills your bone marrow cells. Some doctors are not this thorough, let me be frank. Some doctors would do one round of chemo, some doctors would go straight into the aggressive chemo. But my doctor had told me face to face, he said, I've seen your father, I've seen your mother, I've seen your siblings. My conscience will not let me sleep if something happens to you. So if I'm supposed to do something once, I will do it 3 times on my own to be sure. And plus, I was his first sickle cell patient he was doing this transplant for, so he couldn't afford any hiccups. So he was as thorough as possible, and God blessed me with that doctor, to be honest. And he had even told me, he was like, we're doing this process together because this is my first experience, it's your first experience. So he said, I cannot even tell you what to expect. So we're going to be doing this together. Any little thing you feel, you have to voice it to me. He said, even if your fingernails is paining you, call me. He had to give me his own personal number, which they don't usually do.
Yes.
He had to give me his personal number and said, call me if the nurses are saying one thing and I'm saying, call me. That was how thorough he was. So after the chemotherapy and the radiation, my body was ready to receive the cells. And to be honest, people think the bone marrow transplant, they'll have to take me into the theater. It was nothing like that. They had prepared the cells into this drip bag and they just put it through my veins.
Wow.
And that was it. I can remember that the nurses and doctors in the hospital had a whole ceremony for me. They baked me a cake, happy rebirth. They made me order special meal from the hospital's kitchen. It was a whole ceremony for me, and I know the connotation to that because it's not every day someone have a life-changing experience like that. Anyway.
Because some people, I'm sure, even on the journey, probably don't even survive the chemotherapy
down
and
to
all
that
that.
point.
And some might even just get a crisis right before.
There. Yeah. So yes, after I got the bone marrow cells, it was another battle afterwards because at that point, mind you, they had killed my immunity. So at that point, they had to be very careful. The doctor had told me if I get something even as little as a flu, it could be fatal to me. So at that point, they had many restrictions. Not anybody could enter my room. I could not eat fruits, so that I could not, anything fresh, I couldn't eat it. Everything I ate that period had to be cooked, and not just thoroughly cooked, but cooked by the hospital. I could not order food from outside. They didn't want a situation whereby I would have any sort of food poisoning or any sort of worms or anything. So they had to be careful. No fresh flowers. You know how in the Western world people like to send flowers to the hospital. No fresh flowers near me. Everybody that came into my room had to be robed, with that sterile.
The hazmat suits.
Yes, you cannot just come and touch. So even the nurses that were giving me medication, they had to be fully, suited. That's how thorough they were. Even the air circulation that was coming into my room was sterilized. You get, and that's how thorough it can be. And that's why it scares me when people say they want to do a transplant like this in third world countries. I'm sorry to say this, but can we really be that thorough? Can we really be that thorough? Because it takes that little things like this is the difference between life and death in procedures like this. But let me now tell you, with how thorough we were, I still developed an infection.
Wow.
So it's called graft versus host disease, and this is where your body and the bone marrow cells fight. So even as they had done 3 rounds of chemotherapy for me, even as they had done a full body radiation, my immunity still wanted to fight my sister cells that were coming into my body, and it did. At some point, they had called a death counselor to come talk to me because I'd developed that graft versus host disease. The doctors are giving me antibiotics, antiviral medications, antifungal medications. We were fighting this infection, but it didn't seem like my body was winning. And everybody was just, at this point, your body has to fight. Like they've given me all that they could, so my body has to be the one to pick this up. The doctor had come, he had given me a breakdown. He was like, Toby, we had warned you about this before, because it was even in the booklet that this is something that could go wrong. And most of the time when people don't survive transplant, it's GVHD that kills them. And me, I had gotten mine. They had grade 1 to grade 4. Mine was at grade 3. Grade 4 is the, really fatal
Final
one. Yes. Mine was at grade 3, and everybody was scared. I know I'd called my secondary school WhatsApp group admin to tell him that this was what was going on with me. My parents had told the church, they had gone into midnight prayers. My secondary school WhatsApp group, they had tons of people that would be praying every night for me. It was that horrible. I had started saying my goodbyes to some of my friends. I'd call some of my friends and say, okay, this is what I want for my burial. Delusional. But yes, it was that scary for me. And at some point, out of the blue, my body just picked it up. Even during that time, I said that they had called a death counselor to come and talk to me, to tell me how life and death, how some people experience, dying, how some people say they see white lights, how some people say that they see their loved ones that died. They had given me that whole rundown, and I was prepared. And mind you, I told you that before I got into transplant, I never really thought I was going to survive anyway. Yes. So even hearing that, I'd already told myself, don't finally come.
No, but that might be different because you've seen hope. You've seen light, you've seen, okay, there is this chance, right? And then they're not coming back to tell you in the same breath that, look, this might not work, you might be gone the next week.
Even with that hope, there's one thing about having a chronic disease for a long time. I'd had a chronic disease for 26 years. So I'd had little hopes here and there. I'd had people take me to pastors that they said I'd healed this person that had sickle cell anemia. So I'd had hopes. I'd lived little times of my life, and it still got shattered. So even while having the bone marrow transplant, I wasn't still in it, to be very honest. And that was what my doctor kept telling me. He kept telling me that you have to win mentally first before even your body follows suit. Do you get? And he could low-key see that even with the way I easily accepted I wanted to do the transplant, it felt like I wasn't mentally prepared for that journey. Do you get? He felt like I had been defeated, and he wasn't lying. He wasn't lying. I just felt it is what, if this works, fine. If it don't work, it's okay. So at that point where they were telling me that, okay, I could die at any point, I said, this thing I've been running for is finally at my doorstep. But God has his way of doing things out of the blue. In fact, the doctors were even surprised. Out of the blue, my body just picked it up, and I started getting better. My GVHD went down. It was crazy. For my blood cells started to come up, my hemoglobin started to come up, my platelets started to come up. Everything that was low the cells started doing better. And after about 3 months, my sister cells that were in my body started producing its own blood cells. They did a genotype test and saw that my genotype had changed to AS.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's like, how did you feel receiving that result? Your parents too, like everybody around you, how did they feel seeing that your name and then AS and not SS anymore? Like
the hospital has sent me the soft copy and I forwarded it to everybody. I'm like, I'm now AS. It was surreal. It was the surreal experience. But let me not even lie. Even at then,
you were like,
I was still not convinced. I was not convinced because at that point where they had done the test, seeing it that my genotype had changed to AS, I still wasn't, fully convinced, because at that point I was still in the hospital. I was still going through some symptoms that I wasn't feeling as strong as I should be, and that's because I was still in the recovery process. So when my genotype had changed, I was still in the hospital. I was still on bed. I was still having, weakness. I was still taking medications. It didn't feel like anything had changed for me. Maybe that was why I didn't really get to feel what everybody else was feeling. Everybody was rejoicing. Everybody was happy. But me, I still did hospital. So it was, it was a very, rigorous, draining process for me.
You.
Yeah, I'd gone through hell and back. It was as if they had. If somebody had told me that maybe I'll just take a pill and my genotype would change, but no, it wasn't that easy for me. But I still thank God I'm where I am.
Of course. this is a new chance at life. So are there any permanent life changes that come with this procedure?
I mean, there could be. For both the females and males, something that chemotherapy does, and this is not just for people that do bone marrow transplants, even cancer patients. Chemotherapy, like I said earlier, it kills any fast-growing cells, but it also could kill your eggs.
Wow.
So before you go for a process like this, they would advise you go and go and freeze your eggs. For the females, they'll tell you to freeze your eggs. For the males, they'll tell you to deposit some sperm in the sperm bank, because even if it doesn't totally kill it, it might render it useless, both for the eggs and both for your sperms. So those are some permanent damages that could happen. But aside that,
so it doesn't stop you from carrying and all.
No,
that.
It doesn't tamper with your womb. So even if it tampers with your eggs, you could still do IVF.
Yes.
And still carry a baby. You get. But although if you still freeze your eggs too, it will still, they can put those eggs into your, I don't know how they do it, put those eggs into your womb
by
IVF process.
Yes.
So it doesn't stop you from from getting your kids in the future if you follow due process like the doctors will advise, because no doctor would tell you to go through this procedure and don't break everything down for you. But yes, but aside that, there is no other, not that I have seen, not that I have experienced. Aside that, I've been squeaky clean, no crisis, no complications. I've been living life.
So having gone through that process, and what would you say directly to any sickle cell warrior out there?
I would love to say, I would love to be cliche and say, hold on, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but I still need to be realistic. Not every sickle cell patient might have the opportunity to do this kind of procedure because it is expensive. Like I said, even in this part of the world, number one, most of us can't afford it. Secondly, it is not even a procedure readily available here. Do you get? So you would have to travel, and not everybody has that kind of money. So what I would advise, or what I would tell any sickle cell patients out there, make good use of your time. Whatever, with the life you are living, live it to the fullest. Don't let sickle cell limit you. Anything you dream, anything you want to do, go for it, fight for it, and do it, regardless of whatever medical conditions you have. And if you are among the few that would still go ahead and have a procedure like this done, don't just have this procedure and fold your hands. Fight for those that cannot have this procedure. Advocate for them. Create awareness. Do what you can to make good use of the opportunity that was given to you. And that's what I try to do every living day of my life. I feel like this was what I went through this procedure for. I try to advocate, and that's why I started my foundation. So
what's the name of your foundation?
The name of my foundation is Beyond Sickle Cell Foundation. I promised myself that with this second chance at life that I have gotten, I'm not going to let it waste.
So now, how do you think our government here in Nigeria can support sickle cell patients, parents, people like you who are advocating heavily for sickle cell awareness and all that? How do you think that our government can support and help, and even individuals and private organizations?
So with my experience, you've gotten to see that, bone marrow transplant is a cure for sickle cell. But like I had said, it's not readily available in Nigeria. It's not readily available even in most countries in Africa. What the government can do is make partnerships. Most of these hospitals are ready. Once the money is there, they are ready. This is a procedure that can be done anywhere as far as the money is available. If they care about us so much, which they should, they can bring these companies, these specialists down here, create partnerships even with government organizations. I know the UBT has tried to do it. I don't know how the program is running now, but they could make special programs for that. Nigeria has one of the highest population of people living with sickle cell in the world, not just in Africa.
Wow.
In the world, 150,000 babies are born with sickle cell every year in Nigeria. So if there's any way where this procedure is going to go to in the whole of Africa, it should come here. I know earlier this year they had the fifth global sickle cell conference held in Nigeria for the first time. And that's because of these statistics. They are saying that this should have been done here in the first place, the first one. But now we're even having the fifth one. So this is how important Nigeria is in this conversation. And it needs to continue. They should create more awareness. They should go to villages where people don't know anything, which is what I'm trying to do with my foundation. I've been going down to the creeks where people don't even know what sickle cell is, and give them the education, educate them. I've been doing free genotype testing for people down in the creeks that would not easily turn on their TV and hear about,
because I'm sure there are some people that will say, is Obanje or is this and all that.
Yes. So they need this awareness widely blown. And in my personal opinion, if you are aware that you are AS and you still use your too clear eye and go and marry somebody that is AS, you should be jailed.
Finally, if you could sum up your life now in one word, and I also like you to look at the camera and say something to your family.
If I could sum up my life in one word, I would call myself a warrior. That's what I've always been. That's what I am. Even though I have stopped fighting, I would still fight for those that don't have the opportunity to. And most especially those that tried to fight and in one way or the other lost the battle. Speaking of my elder brother that died in 2011, Bina. Speaking of my friend Philomena that died in 2017. Speaking of Mamuzo that we lost earlier this year, a 12-year-old girl in Warri. These are the people I'll continue to be a warrior for as long as I have breath. And for my family, for my friends, for my fellow warriors, I love you. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I mean, growing up, I had classmates who were sickle cell warriors, although some, I don't know where they are now, if they've made it, if they fought through. But speaking with you today has really enlightened me, and I think now I would do much more to help this cause, because a lot of people are living in darkness about it, and I would really love to join the fight. It was super awesome having you here.
Thank you for having me.
Like I said at the beginning, you're such a beautiful person, and for the fact that you've gone through this and you've not gone back into your shell to be like, well, you all have it, I'm out of it, but you're still here trying to create awareness and fight for other people who are still there. And I believe that your advocacy would make an impact in Africa and beyond.
That's good.
I want to say that we're incredibly proud of you and all the work that you're doing. You're amazing.
Thank
I
you.
don't know how you stayed through the whole episode without crying.
I'm telling you.
I tried so hard.
You're really a warrior, and I pray that all the light you're trying to shed about sickle cell, that it would keep growing in your platform. Thank you so much for coming on this
Thank you
episode.
so much for having me. Thank you.
So thank you for sticking with us on this episode. If you have anything you want to share with us regarding this, please drop a comment, and also reach out to Beyond Sickle Cell and fight and help this cause, because it is a great cause, and trust me, you'll feel fulfilled by doing this. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.